Welcome to Psalm a Day. We're looking at Psalm 104 today, looking at the first 26 verses. It continues a series of Psalms that focus upon how amazing our God is, demonstrated through the beauty of creation and the relationships He's created in creation between nature and man, nature and animals, and overall, of course, between nature and the Creator. And we begin Psalm 104 with a reflection of where beauty really comes from. The beauty that is in nature must come from a God who is himself beautiful. In this case, power and light give us the context of how amazing God is. And then the psalm beautifully goes through and works through a very similar trajectory that Genesis 1 and 2 take. But this time, largely from the perspective of God and what it looks like from God's perspective for him to look upon his world, to comment on it, and look upon the relationships he's created and to see how amazing they really are. And then lastly, our part within this constellation of relationships that God has created. Psalm 104 begins by speaking about how amazing God is. And so I want us to pause and I want you to reflect and give thanks to God for the beauty of his creation and for the power and love that he has displayed to you. In our second section of the psalm from verses 5 through to verse 14, it gives two amazing ideas. It first sets up that God is a God who has created a nature to be in relationship with one another, but also those relationships are expressly a reflection of the purposes and character of God. As you can read it, you can see. It says in verse 6, "You covered it with the watery depths as with a garment. The waters stood above the mountains, but at your rebuke the waters fled." And so this constant motif through the early part of this psalm is nature is exactly as God intended it to be. When he created it with a purpose and with a relationship to other parts of nature to reflect both function and beauty. And that is an amazing thing. But life is more than function and beauty, although those things are important. And so the next part of the psalm speaks amazingly about the way that God has given us more than just physical needs. He's given us emotional joy, emotional needs to be met. And hopefully you can see that as an example in verse 15. Let me go back to 14 and then you can see it's linked to verse 15. He makes grass grow for the cattle and plants for people to cultivate, bringing forth food from the earth. God's a God of order, not a God of chaos. It's not out of chaos that order has come. God is ordered. Humanity is placed in this world with other creatures to live out this existence that God has created, and everything has a purpose. Everything is created for its kind, and we ourselves live according to that, and we reap the benefits. Verse 15 has some of those benefits. The benefits are more than just physical expressions of being fed, physical expressions of knowing that we have been given dominion over the world, to care for it. Those are important. But God is a God of compassion and order, yes, but also a God of joy, emotion, care. Verse 15 is one of those verses. You can see it. Wine that gladdens human hearts, oil to make their faces shine, and bread that sustains their hearts. And so the joys that we receive aren't just a pragmatic function. Food for the soul is food to be enjoyed, beauty to be shared. This is the God that we love and share in. And so give thanks for him and just pause for a moment for the emotional joy it is in being a person loved by God. What can you do? Well, pause, and how about you give thanks to God for the people he's placed in your life whom love you, and then also give thanks and ask for ideas about how you can love others that God has placed in your life. The last part of our psalm that we're looking at today, from verses 19 through to verse 26, goes back to the big picture a little bit. After speaking initially about how amazing God is, the beauty of his creation, verses 1 to 4, verses 5 really through up until here in verse 18, do speak about the glory it is to be part of his creation, the joy it is to be a part of a series of relationships that we can bond with humanity, yes, but in this case the psalmist is looking at, from God's perspective, the amazing joy it is to be part of his world and care for one another. And that's the way that nature works to fulfill that created order. Now he goes on to talk about how amazing God is to create the universe in one sense, and the world that we actually inhabit. The beauty of his regularity is demonstrated in the moon and the stars. They represent God's power over chaos. It is not chaos, remember. A lot of the ancient world believed that chaos in the end came to order. No, we believe God is a God of order. He has created us in this whole universe of regularity, of consistency, and that is, in one sense, where we get the ability to study science, to know the arts, because life is ordered, life is regulated, and thank the Lord it is. That things exist in physics, in chemistry, in biology, all throughout the known sciences, because God has enabled regularity and consistency to be so. So verses 19 through to verse 26 really speak about all creatures, all the universe, all the world have been created in this system where everything occurs at the express purpose of God. What a God we have, who's created this world to be his world and has placed us in it. And this psalm focuses on how amazing this world is from God's perspective, that we have the joy now of living in it.